There we are. Okay, so welcome this evening, guys. So this is I know we've got a number of people on the call that have probably been on with us, and some that maybe haven't. I think most people have though. So week 11 feels a lot longer with this this lockdown that's been. But yeah, we're in week 11 now. So for those that were interested at the start, just with the 10 questions, there's some of the answers, or all the answers. So I think Beerhoff was got. Not sure if anyone got Steve in. Rivaldo was your first one. Mr. Owen, Jurgen, Samuel Eto'o, Trapattoni, Taylor, Heinix, and Ronaldo. So just to keep us moving. Not sure how many people got in there, but there is at least, I'm sure if it's anything like me and you're doing about 4 quizzes a week at this moment in time, you'll start to get more and more as the weeks have gone on. Well, so welcome, guys. As per usual, and this kind of helps us just with playback and the recording. Brew, if you've got a brew, if you want something stronger, feel free. I know we've had people with the cans on from out in West Cumbria, so feel free if you want something stronger, just to sit back and listen and ask some questions. Laptop or tablet, probably best, but if you are on a phone, you can still use it. Just toggle between the 2 screens, so press on the speech bubble. If you could just help us, we'll be trying as we go, but just keep yourself on mute. If we use the chat function to ask any questions, make any comments, and then what we'll do is we'll unmute you as we go through, and it just helps us in terms of the feedback on the call as well for when the recording's being played back. There's our tech support. So this is my boss, our CEO. So Ben's on the call. Ben's number's on there. If anyone has an issue, if anyone needs anything, they can't get me for any reason, drop Ben a line. Drop Ben a text, WhatsApp, or give him a call on there. So those that have been on for a bit, you'll have seen Pete. He doesn't really need much of an introduction, I don't think. You will have seen him around, no doubt. He's probably one of the most inspirational people I think we come in contact with. And I say that from a personal point of view as well. So the work, and you just listening to Ben there talk about some of the stuff, his previous experiences had with him. We're fortunate enough to see a lot of Pete. This is a superb opportunity for anybody to ask any questions, challenge, because I know Pete likes to be challenged as well, and that's not saying that everything. As we've listened to our previous callers, again, yes, Pete is at the forefront of this, but our previous things is have a critical eye, and that's been really important, I think, as we've gone through this series. Topic tonight, Pete's going to cover sort of what the next phase is really, and where we're sort of going on this journey for the foundation phase. So that's enough from me, definitely for this evening, and I will hand over to Mr. Sturgess for you all.
Thanks, James. Really appreciate that. After that build-up, I do feel very, very nervous now. So please forgive me if I start rambling or waffling on. But thanks for that. I really appreciate it. I think everybody who's taken the time to listen in tonight will feel that we're all totally committed to the jobs that we do. Mine just happens to be, I believe, the best job in the world, because it involves releasing the potential in all our young players, and I can't think of a better job. So thanks for the opportunity to chat with you. I want it to be an open forum, and with that in mind, we've done over 80 of the DNA roadshows, with Roadshow 1 and Roadshow 2. So I've been going around the country extensively just trying to introduce you to some of our key messages. But this is almost a unique opportunity for me to get some personal feedback. So if you attended any of the roadshows, if you are brave enough and wouldn't mind sharing what it's meant to you, your job with your team or at your club, what some of the issues might have been, what you really understood, what you might need more clarification around. That will really help me reflect on the way that I'm trying to communicate out to the wider game what our DNA messages are. So, James, I'm really happy if this now becomes more of a two-way thing, so that I can get a feel for where, everything that we've sent out regarding the foundation phase DNA has landed with the coaches.
Yeah, definitely. Neil, and I've seen we'll come back to that because I think that's going to come up, mate, during the slides. So Neil's just asked a question around Belgium, Pete, which I know will come up, I'm guessing, as we move through. So if we get kicked off with, guys, if you want to drop in the chat function, so those that attended the roadshows, how have they affected you, I suppose, what have they meant to you, and any comments which sort of helps Pete moving forward in terms of shaping probably the delivery of the messages, Pete, if that's fair.
It is, yeah, because I know when we do a roadshow, I've condensed masses and masses of information into, a dozen slides on the roadshow. And I'm expecting people to just attend a roadshow for an hour and a half, look at the slides, and then suddenly begin to make a difference in the way that they coach or the way that they approach their coaching. And I think the one thing I do realise more than anything is how difficult this can be and how threatening it can be. So I just need almost a sense check to see whether I need to adopt a different approach, but also where I can help the coaches and support the coaches in the future more effectively, because that is my job.
So guys, just those that have been on the roadshows, if you could give us we'll just have a couple of minutes. Could you give us some feedback just around that? I'll be honest, it's very rare that you get one of the national leads coming out and pretty much asking what your thoughts are in terms of the roadshows, the work that's gone on. So please, if you can take just a minute or so, the opportunity just to drop some stuff in the chat function, and then you can pretty much have maybe a conversation with Pete around what your thoughts were.
Yeah, that would be great.
He isn't scary.
I mean, if there's nobody on tonight who's attended a roadshow, that's fine. We can skip this bit. But because there are other things that are going to come up in the presentation and in the chat that hopefully we can gauge how the coaches might feel about that as well.
Yeah, definitely. Just because I think there's just a lot of people in and out at the minute. Yeah.
Hi, James. It's Gareth.
Hi, Gareth. I can hear you, pal.
Just from my point of view, obviously, Pete used my players last time he was up. It was really for the parents to say that, because I was trying to do a lot of the stuff that Pete showed us, and a few parents were like saying, "Well, what's this all about?" So when obviously my kids were used that time, the parents it was really helpful, and they could see why we were doing it and why we were progressing that way.
Yeah, this is not to blow smoke up any part of your anatomy, but I remember that evening because it was sunny, it was warm, everything was perfect, and I can say with hand on heart, no group has taken to those games in the way that those boys did. So if you wanted almost the perfect storm, I think it happened that night. And so that really resonated with me and certainly energized me into what these games might do for the kids. But you're right. The road shows are asking the coaches to consider lots and lots of things. And these, in the main, are coaches who are desperate for knowledge, go out of their way to source knowledge and spend a lot of time developing themselves. So if it's hard for them, how hard is it going to be for the parents who literally just turn up and drop their kids off and expect to see coaching in a particular way? So I totally empathize with those kind of issues. And you're not on your own. This is a bit of regular feedback, that I get.
Just so I've got one. Nick Wharton, do you just want to unmute yourself?
Cheers, James. Can you hear us,
yeah?
Yeah. Hi, Pete.
Hiya.
So one of my roles, Pete, before lockdown was managing the Girls Advanced Coaching Centre up here, and I'm sort of looking at rewriting the technical syllabus to make it age appropriate, if you like, rather than have one syllabus covering all age groups. So around staying on the ball for foundation phase, I've kind of broken the technical corner down into shielding, turning, running with the ball, and that they can cross over as well, as in I could run with the ball and have to shield and hold somebody else, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I just wanted to. I just kind of wondered. Is there anything that I'm really missing out on in terms of the foundation phase? Don't get me wrong. I've got the physical corner and how that interacts with the technical corner, and obviously psychosocial. But in terms of just the technical corner, is there anything else that you would consider to put in there?
If I think you've got some really key components in there. If in the way that you phrase it, if you want to get clear message out to the coaches and to the parents and to any adult who's involved in supporting the centre, if you say that you want to develop those things both in isolation but also in lots of different game formats, I think you've got more of your bases covered.
Yeah, well, I mean, we use small-sided games, Pete, anyway. It's all part of all that's, and obviously that links in with the feedback that we get from our TCC as well, so yeah.
I think when we get on to the next phase of the DNA, I think it'll make more sense, and you'll probably realise that you're further down that road than you might think. So it's great that you are looking for transfer of certain skills all of the time in different situations when you've got one teammate, or you might have three teammates. What does staying on the ball look like in those situations? And I think that's where, when we say we're going to do 6 weeks on defending and we're going to do 6 weeks on counter-attacking and this, that and the other, what we're discussing is a season, 2 seasons, 3 seasons work to really embed this in so that the technical capability is there, and also the transfer into lots and lots of different formats of the game so that they are so safe and secure in applying that those technical skills within the game.
Yeah,
I think that's the key, and it also supports our games-based approach and our constraints-based approach, because kids come to the training and join our teams because they love the game. Yeah. And I think this methodology helps develop their individual abilities within the games that they love.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Pete.
You're welcome. Shall we take one more, James, if there is, and then... James, have we got a technical glitch?
Vidi, you're on mute.
Sorry. This 11 weeks in, you'd have thought I'd known how to take myself off mute by now. James Fallon, are you there? Do you want to give Pete just that feedback around that road shows? Because I think that was the initial point to start with, was around the road shows, mate. Or if not, I can read it out in the chat function. It's James Fallon.
I'm on the mobile, so just toggling between.
All right, sorry, James. Yeah.
Oh no. Yeah, so I've seen a couple of road shows. I'm down in Wiltshire, so in Melksham, and I think my takeaway, which I think the longer you're in coaching, the more you realise, I think everyone in coaches always thinks, or the foundation is you're trying to do what's best, what you think is best for the children. And I think my takeaway from seeing Pete is everyone can see that he doesn't have to know the kids to let them get on, play with the friends, not be too. He's obviously heavily involved, but not too much involved. And it's about them and I've just wrote there, the key words. There's fun, energy, laughter, and I think then as coaches, when we see that, because that's all that's all we want, isn't it? Because no matter what level that they're going to go to, if they've got that, if the Premier League players have got that, they're going to be probably the best team in the Premier League. So
yeah,
I think to see that's really the big takeaway for me above everything else.
Yeah. Thanks, James. I remember those sessions. Did you go to the one where we used the girls?
I did, yeah. I went to that one as well. So, yeah, they were brilliant.
Because the fun, the energy, and the laughter tended to come from me that night, if I remember, and it was great, because I think that was when I suddenly stopped. Somebody kicked the ball away, and I was giving penalties all over the place. So it just seemed to. But James, you've raised a really important point. And it's partly critical of myself, but also it shows what is possible, because one of our key messages through the foundation phase DNA is putting the player at the centre and really trying to meet their needs in the best possible way. And yet I've done 80 road shows where I've worked with kids that I don't even know. So in a way, the whole roadshow concept is flawed, because I'm working against trying to meet the needs of the children, because I'm working with players that I don't really know. So it's not easy for me to do that. So that's on the negative side. But on the positive side is, if you can create the right environment and pitch the sessions at hopefully the right level for whoever's in front of you, whether you know the kids or not, you're likely to get some engagement. And I think we've got that negative side where I couldn't really meet individual needs in the way that I would like to if I worked with the players over a long time. But it's also a great example of how kids will engage if the environment's right and we pitch it just at the right level.
Yeah, definitely.
Thanks, James.
Thank you.
What do you want to do? Because there is some stuff coming through on the chat page. Do you want to go through? Because I'm guessing some of your content might complement, should we say, some of the stuff that's coming in. If you want me to go through. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that we can do that, and then we can pick up as much as we can afterwards.
Yeah, spot on. Is that changing for your screen?
It's halfway up the screen at the moment. Yeah. So, I mean, this is the opening slide. I think there's a video that's going to follow this, and it really is about, we have this desire and this real urge to produce more creative players, the types of players that are going to help us get to the latter stages of World Cups and European Championships and hopefully go on and win it. And I don't think we produce enough of that type of player. And I think we can begin that process in the foundation phase, as I've said on a number of times. So if we're looking at creativity, it comes in lots of different guises. And I think the video that follows, James, is just some examples just to kick us off.
Yeah. Let me, this will be a test, Pete. You'll be the first person to play a video on our coffee club.
All right, okay. Hope it works then.
This is definitely a test.
Yeah, we might not get the sound, but we got Muhammad Ali there with his rope-a-dope.
Oh, mate.
This guy needs a three-pointer, and he's on a free throw. So watch what he does. So he deliberately hits the rim for it to come out so he can take a three. Yeah, this is stuttering a bit, isn't it? Kicks his leg away. And then knees him in the face. Not nice. This guy is looking the other way as he knocks the ball out of his opponent's hands. Yeah. James, can we circulate this video afterwards?
Yeah, definitely. Is it not?
Yeah.
It's playing on my end. Is it not playing on yours?
No, it's stuttering for me. I don't know what the feedback is from the people watching. But
yeah, it's the same really. It happened in the refs room last night as well. I think with the number of people on, just it's slowing it down a little bit, pal.
Yeah, it is. All right, Pete, what I'll do is I'll circulate that video to everybody.
Yeah. So I mean, it really is just lots of examples from different sports of how creative people can be, and sports people. So we want to capture that. We also want to get down to the real nitty-gritty of why kids come to play football. So I'm part of a group with people like Graham Carrick, Paul Holder, Kelsey Byrne, Martin Thomas, Paul McGuinness, and one or two others who are really looking into interrogate what our development journeys look like for our young players. And part of that is looking at why kids come and play. And the idea behind that is that if we know why they come, we have to then try to pitch at that level. So if children come for purely recreational reasons, and we're trying to be Jose Mourinho and have, you know, hundreds of cones out, and we're giving loads of tactical information, that information, even though it might be brilliant, is not going to land with the children. So we almost have to provide an environment that meets their needs for whatever the motivation is for them to come. And we looked at invasion games, and instead of saying, well, what are the principles of invasion games, we actually substituted that with, well, what is the purpose? Why do kids come and play? And really, it's to invade space and score goals. And so that led us to look at this idea of penetration and invading territory, and really how that can help us score more goals. So that got us thinking again, which I know within a group of those kind of people, it's very dangerous. So we begin to really discuss and consider what the next steps might be. So nothing tonight that I'm going to share with you has been locked in. It's very much an insight into some of the things that we are considering. So this first slide is about considering why the kids come and why do they want to play this game of football. And the purpose of the game is to score goals. So it's part of our role to provide an environment that allows them to do that. And then along the way, we can help them become better at this aspect of the game. So if we go on to the next one, James. I'm hoping that the coaches who are listening in tonight are very, very familiar with these things. The first phase of the Foundation Fade Roadshow needed some strap lines so that we could communicate the same thing, but also we wanted it to resonate with coaches so that they remembered it, could repeat it, and use the same terminology with the players and the parents that they were working with. So you should all be familiar with these things. We looked at them in isolation. We looked at travelling with the ball, dribbling with it, turning with it. But the second part of these bullet points is about beginning to combine those things, because the game is so random and so complicated that you might be dribbling with the ball, then suddenly you have to turn, and then suddenly you might have to travel into some space. So all of these things can be worked on in isolation. They can also be combined together so that our players get a fully rounded idea of what staying on the ball is all about. Are there any questions about those, James, from the coaches? And do they think they've been able to establish some of these things in the work that they do?
so if I just go back, because I think it kind of Hoddy put it to start with. So let me just find his comment, Pete, because I think So probably answer to it. David Hodgson had put that the hide, reveal, and manoeuvre was a game changer for his under-7s, under-8s at the time. And it took some convincing with his parents around staying on the ball, but they're seeing a real change in the kids and the parents 2 years on. So he's 2 years on from the start of probably when he's seen it.
Yeah, that's really useful. And do you know what, James? It's not any reflection on me, but I am getting more and more feedback from coaches saying we weren't sure when we started this process off, but wow, just look at what the kids can do now. So I think for people who are who may be still unconvinced or still toying with the ideas, this is a long-term process, but we have to start somewhere. So the coach who started it 2 years ago and is now bearing, the benefits of that and bearing the fruit of that change, that's going to continue, because the players are only going to get better at it, more familiar with it, and more confident in their own ability to apply this in games. Yeah,
and I think, Pete, that you've probably seen some players. So when you took Gareth's players on your last Triple P, and I know that some of the guys weren't a thing, but the quality of the player in terms of the work that Gareth had done from under-7s through was quite evident. I know Gareth had came on earlier on and said to you there, but I'm sure you could tell that the work that had been done, and certainly the groundwork that had been done to start with, was along these sort of lines.
Yeah, and going back to the coach who was at the Melksham Roadshow in Wiltshire, depending on the children that are in front of you, I will subtly change the activities to meet the needs and the capabilities of the children. But we pretty much have done the same activities with all children. It's just that with some groups, you can really challenge them to the next bit, where for others, you might just pare it back a little bit because that's a better fit with where they are. And I think the boys we worked with on that night, I wasn't running out of, where to take them next, but they were definitely ready for the next bit. And I think Gareth will be really excited by where the next bit takes us, because once we've established and developed really good individual techniques by staying on the ball and getting better at all of the things bullet pointed here, when we go on to the next slide, this is what we are now considering for phase 2. So this is the next bit, but the next bit depends so much on players being able to do this bit first. So if we go on to the next slide, James.
Yeah, that should start to come through.
Yeah.
Is that showing?
Not quite, not for me, no, nothing's changed. Oh, here we go. So this looks a bit busy enough. On my screen, James, I've got the very last bullet point that's
bear with me. Let me just bear with us a second. It might have been when you've sent it to me.
I'm impressed by your calmness under pressure. I'd have been
fair with me.
Yeah, I'd have had a meltdown by now.
No.
There's a strong exterior Pete put inside. He's dying at this moment in time, believe me.
I mean, we can work around it, James. It's not.
No, you're fine. Just let me stop sharing and start again. Is that?
So that's the individual techniques.
There we are. Should start to come through now.
Okie doke. Yeah, I mean, for me, if there's one slide that the coaches remember, it would be this, particularly if they've been working really hard with their players to develop those individual techniques, because the next phase that we would like coaches to consider is taking that move from developing individual techniques to developing individual tactics. So if we've got players who are really comfortable and confident staying on the ball, then if we link it to that notion of penetration and invading space and invading territory in order to score goals, look what we can do once we are comfortable staying on the ball, and we can give off a little bit of cognitive space to think about the next decisions. So if I'm comfortable staying on the ball, one of the tactics that I need to develop is that I need to scan more effectively, because I'm looking at the situation that is changing because I'm staying on the ball. And that will help me with my next decision and with my next action. I can't do that if all of my thought is on the ball. I now might feel confident enough that if I'm marked tightly, I can stay on the ball because I can shake this defender off by stopping, starting, changing direction and changing speed. But I can't do that if I'm still wondering where the ball is in relation to my feet. If I'm really confident in possession, I can now begin to attract and entice defenders towards me and out of position, so that I can either isolate them myself and beat them, or in line with my teammates, we can begin to take up different positions so that we can play 1-2s around those defenders that I've enticed and attracted towards me because I've just stood still on the ball, or I've slowed down and moved with the ball. So these are all tactics that the players can begin to deploy once they are comfortable on the ball. If I'm happy staying on the ball and I move laterally across the pitch, the situation is going to change. It'll change the position of the defenders. It'll change the position of my supporting teammates. So gaps and spaces will open and close as I move with the ball. I need the coach then to help me with what the next options might be. And it might be that I decide to travel quickly through a gap that wasn't there before, but is now. And that's the decision that I make. It might be that the gap's opened up and my teammate has made a great run into a forward position and I slide the ball through to him. But that's only possible because I've stayed on the ball and moved with it, and the situation that we were in before is now different. So the next phase will be the timing of all those decisions, of when I decide to stand still, speed up, travel quickly through a gap, release the ball, play a 1-2, entice a defender towards me. That takes years and years to begin to perfect so that I can influence the game in a really, really positive way. And also the best players are able to change their mind right at the last minute. I think with foundation phase players, there is so much preparation when you're either going to pass the ball or you're going to dribble with the ball that it's quite difficult to change your mind if the situation suddenly changes. The best players can do that. If I stay on the ball and the situation changes right at the last minute, I've got to be confident enough that I can change my next decision or my next action, even though I was almost committed to doing what I was going to do before. This is what the individual tactics will bring to the gameplay and the game understanding for all of our young players if we're brave enough to begin to work this way. That there ends my manifesto.
Thanks, Fred.
Any questions on that?
We'll just that covers. There's a lot in there to
just let that settle. Yeah. it would be really nice to see if the coaches thought that it was the next logical step.
Yeah, I think that's it's sort of a good question, is it? Because I suppose if we consider that all the kids or everyone will have a different group of kids at a different point in time, so it's where do they believe their kids can take it. I think if you use Gareth's kids, because I know I've seen them quite a bit. Gareth will probably be thinking, actually, this is now, my kids are definitely at a point where we can start to look at this. But I'm not sure what anybody else's thoughts are on that.
Yeah, I think halfway down, there's that bullet point about adding disguise and feints and real cunning and trickery to your intentions. I think that comes quite easily to kids. But as soon as you start staying on the ball and you can feint to try to trick your opponent, or you can disguise what you're going to do, that adds a whole new dimension to how you can influence the game. And for your opponents, it'll be a nightmare to play against.
I suppose, Pete, as well, I mean, the question is, so with the term, I suppose, staying on the ball, does that give a misconception that it might be that we stay on it and we don't lend and we don't move? I'm just throwing it out there, playing devil's advocate. Does it give that idea?
Yes. And I think that was one of the reason I asked the question right at the beginning is because one of the regular bits of feedback is that we're not sure that staying on the ball was the right phrase, because it does send out this notion that we want players to be ball greedy. It's not that. We want players to be ultra confident, and part of that is their ability when they're on the ball, but also in knowing what we would like to follow. We couldn't get any of it unless players were comfortable staying on the ball. So we almost had to, if this was a graphic equalizer, we almost had to send it right to the far end and really focus and prioritize on staying on the ball, knowing that that's what was needed for the next bit.
Yeah, good. There's a few things coming in now, Pete. So, Ben's dropped in. Do you want to unmute yourself, mate?
I'm sure people are a bit fed up with me, but just to say I fully agree with it, Pete. I think so. I've had my set of kids that I'm coaching at the moment since they were 7, and they're now under 10s going into under 11s, and I think that naturally this is something that we've been looking to move to. The kids are naturally at this age group now looking at the sort of things that you're suggesting, and I think this just gives a link between the connect and combine sort of element of the foundation, which I don't think the kids are quite there at to be able to do all of the connect and combine, but it's a great foundation to get to the next stage when they probably are. And I agree with you to a point around the staying on the ball stuff, but I think it was a great, it shook coaching up, so it was a great statement. And I think we naturally progressed. I know talking to a lot of the coaches who were on here, naturally progressed to looking at it, staying on the ball as an individual, to staying on the ball as a group, to staying on the ball as a team. And I think I've put on my stuff that I learned from you from the last session was just how much actual technical content is in staying on the ball. If you look at ball familiarity, if you look at sort of dribbling with the ball, running with the ball, shielding the ball, sort of turning with the ball, there's so much there. And I've got to be honest, we're under 10s, we are still on the content of staying on the ball, and this just looks natural, the right progression for the players at that age group. So yeah, completely agree. But then I would, Pete, so anybody who knows us would say that I would.
No, I mean this is there to be challenged, because as I said at the earlier on, this is what we're considering, this is what we are presenting as a possible way forward. There's a lot of buy-in for it, so I'm hoping this will become the next phase of our DNA. There's two things I want to mention. Firstly, if we go back to the video, I know it didn't play very well, but if you want creativity, players have got to be able to do all of these things really, really well. So unless you can play with real disguise and cunning and change your mind at the last second, and know when to boss the game by speeding up, slowing down, enticing players towards you, moving defenders out of position just by moving either towards your own goal or laterally across the pitch. These are all tactics that we can deploy to disorganise and disrupt an organised defence. And if you've got a team or a group of players who can do this really effectively, you will be a nightmare to play against. So that's the first bit about creativity and the kind of player that are going to win us World Cups. The second thing is, the next bit to this is how you then begin to combine with one or two teammates. Because as soon as you've got this kind of capability, that gives your closest teammates an opportunity to leave you on your own and offer support, or to get into positions where they can combine and connect with you in ones, twos and threes, so that those small number actions can really influence whatever format of the game that you play. And I think we have this notion about we move from individual to unit to team too quickly. And we think there's a place between the individual and a unit. And that place is for being good when there's two of you against an opponent, or three of you against two opponents, or two of you against two opponents. And so we want to offer a smaller building block that goes between individual, unit and team. And I think if you've got that and the players really understand those situations in a game, you've got players who can really play any kind of format. Because even in the 11-a-side game, there are lots of times when it's 2v2 or 2v1 or 3v2. And what we're doing in the foundation phase is starting the players off on a journey that really prioritises this and helps them become absolutely brilliant at it.
Good stuff. There's a few in here, Pete. So, Craig Bristow, I don't know if you want to unmute yourself, mate.
Hi, Craig.
If not, Craig's usually the one who makes cheesecakes for this, Pete. So, well, obviously you can't have one virtually.
Gotta keep
Craig's
it sweet, yeah.
Craig's thought he was lucky enough to see the roadshows early on in his coaching journey when the boys were under sixes. So thinking he's now now under nines next season, so it'd be perfect to start introducing some of these things. Neil Anthropus, are you there, mate?
Hi Pete. You okay?
Hey Neil.
You okay? It's just a quick question around obviously the way that you've split the two slides up, and you're obviously looking at the penetration side of it around the principles of play. So what I was sort of thinking was, would you split that into two aspects of dribbling and say one being dribbling to keep possession? So obviously that's your hiding, your manoeuvring the ball, and then the other one being dribbling to penetrate. So if you were going to design a curriculum around that, or as we say on the AYAs, have the players the syllabus, would you use those two titles rather than maybe staying on the ball?
It's certainly worth considering, because what you're making is the distinction between the technique of dribbling and the tactics that can be deployed when you dribble. And I think we've looked at dribbling in great detail in the past through our past courses and through CPD events, but I'm not sure we've ever really looked at it as a tactical weapon. And yet for me, it can be. So it can be used to eliminate an opponent So I take you on and I try to beat you. I think dribbling with the ball can also be used tactically, that I can attract an opponent, entice you, and then begin to not actually dribble to beat you, but take you out of position.
Yeah.
So that I get in a better position to exploit or beat you. Or if I can't do it, my teammates can. And so I'm using that ability on the ball in more of a tactical sense rather than a purely technical one. So looking at it in the way that you've described, Neil, would work. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, thank you.
And Graham, Mr. Carrick's on, Pete as well. So Graham, do you want to unmute yourself, because you've made some really good points around staying on the ball, probably from the question that I asked, if you're there.
Yeah, no, I'm just commenting, just enjoying reading the comments. Keep it up, flying. Yeah, no, it's vital for the stuff that comes later. So, hi everyone. I'm work with Pete as part of this group. So, yeah, the staying on the ball, individual tactics is vital for whatever we ask of the kids as they get older, and on the next bit that comes, wherever the kids are at on the journey. How well they can stay on the ball and how good they are with the individual tactics will dictate how they play the game as they get older, and the formations and all these things that will get thrown at them when they play Lemby 11. It'll ultimately be dependent on how well they can play as individuals. So that's my little bit to add in to where it links. But the important bit is that we don't skip those stages, and we make sure the kids stay on the ball. And actually, we need to keep working on staying on the ball skills and individual tactics as they go into the next phase, as we call it, or as they get older. You don't just like have it. You don't just do it and think, right, want the next thing. You need to keep working at it and keep refining it. So yeah, it's vital. And I'm just backing up Pete's saying, because he's bang on what we believe.
Thanks,
Cheers,
Graham. That's a first.
I suppose, and Graham made a point there, Pete, and it's a question I have around. We categorise these people into phases, into age groups, into blocks, and it's really, so a lot of the things that we say are right. I'm not under 10s now. I must move on to this. I suppose the challenge for coaches and the grassroots coach that, let's say they've done the level 1, and that's where they've stopped and they're happy. What is knowing when. When's the right time to move on with these players? I don't know if you've got any advice for anyone around recognising what point do we say, actually, Graham makes a good point there, do we ever move on? Do we not keep having to revisit things? But when we put stuff out there like this, we kind of see it as, right, this is the next phase, and everyone jumps at it, and we maybe forget that, I'm starting here, I've seen this, it looks good, let's go with it.
It's what sharing through these bullet points is based on loads of discussions, loads of considerations of lots of different things, because these individual techniques and individual tactics never happen in isolation. So if we haven't got our youngest players doing these things, then there are going to be gaps in their understanding and their ability. And we have to bear in mind that some kids just come for fun, and they may not want any of this extra detail. They just want you to work with them and maintain that kind of fun and recreational element. But we will have players who need the next bit, want the next bit, and want to improve. So we need to know about the techniques, the tactics, but we also have to match that to the right formats of the game. So if quite arbitrarily we say to a player, you're 11, you're now going to play 11-a-side football, if a lot of these things are not in place, there's going to be a huge mismatch, because in the 11-a-side game, you're going to need all of these things to be effective. If you don't have them, it's going to affect your enjoyment levels, but also your effectiveness within the game. And if you're not being effective and enjoying the game, there's a likelihood that you'll drop out. So there will be players who are playing a format of the game that doesn't suit their capability. And so these things won't be developed, or will be very difficult to be developed in an 11-a-side game, because you're not on the ball enough. And so where do you get to practice it? So we also want, as part of our considerations, we are looking at, instead of development being divided up into certain age bands and age sections, why not look at it as a skills journey and try to give what the children need for where they currently are? So if there are gaps in my learning and understanding, don't move me to 11v11 just because I'm of a particular age. I actually need something that, playing another format, probably a smaller format of the game, will help me develop quicker than if you keep me at 11v11. So none of these things happen in isolation, James. So we are considering lots and lots of other things as well.
And I suppose on that, Pete, the challenge we've got in this country with the current formats of the game is that actually that's exactly what we do. So we tell them that because they're an age, they're a 13-year-old, they'll play 9v9 or they'll play 11v11 in some leagues. And this is where the real challenge comes between, I'm guessing, governance and development of the players for the better of the game.
It is, because I mean, we have made huge strides forward. So the youth review that was made, that really did begin to shape the landscape, had a massive effect, and it's really advantaged more children than it's disadvantaged.
Yeah.
But we're looking for the next bit that is going to make, again, a significant impact upon the development of our players. So if we look to match players with the right format for where they are on their skills journey, I think we've got a much better chance of engaging more players, making it more enjoyable, and improving to a higher level more and more players, because we've got the right methodology, the right kind of technical and tactical content being applied in the right format for where the child is in their journey. And sometimes that can't be dictated just by the age that you happen to be.
No, I'm completely on board. I completely agree. And I think that's the hard thing, I suppose, for probably coaches listening in. And Graham, you're absolutely right. The coaches listening is, well, I'm going to say, we're told we're playing 9v9. We're told by the league now, we're not in academy football, so we don't get the opportunity to move players up and down that spectrum.
Yeah.
That it's a real challenge we've got for our kids. Some kids that are striving equally, some kids that are also sort of striving to keep up, and some kids that are forging ahead.
Yeah. I'm not saying this is easy by any stretch, and really that's why we have to present a case that's bulletproof in order for any change to even be considered. So we've obviously given this lots and lots of thought. We think it's right. It's not locked in yet, but we are getting closer to a point where we want to present this as the way forward. And in doing this, I don't want coaches to think, well, what about the youth awards? You know, they went into fashion and now they're not with us anymore. We had the future game that seemed to be the way forward, and now we haven't got that anymore. This is not to replace all of the good stuff that we currently do. So from my point of view with the Module 1, we've made absolutely massive strides in ensuring that the environment for our young children is much more conducive to them as children, but also regarding teaching and learning. I think our practice design is so much better than it used to be. So we've made massive strides. Any changes that we're considering, do not put those at risk. We absolutely have to keep those, but build on it so that we give our players the best chance to both enjoy it and to improve to the level that, you know, they want to get to.
Do you want me to move? I don't think there's any other questions coming around that yet. Oh, just one, Pete, was around futsal.
Yeah.
Being commented on there that they feel there's a a real opportunity to develop these areas, specifically around the slide that you've shown here?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't prompted that question, but it has fallen right into my hands, because over the last few weeks, some of our group have been talking to the Brazilian Federation, and it's the very beginnings of a collaboration between us and Brazil. And so they've been asking questions about our player and coach development pathways, and we've obviously done the same for them. Their children don't play any other sport, any other form of football other than futsal until the age of 10. So in schools, recreationally, but also environmentally, because there are very few large spaces, all of their informal football is futsal on small courts, small spaces, different kids of different ages, kids of different abilities, and hours and hours and hours of informal play. So the Brazilians say that futsal has saved them. They also talk about it being their national laboratory of improvisation, because if you've got no time and space, that's where you become creative. But because it's the game in schools, if you want to be a teacher in Brazil, when you get your degree, part of that degree gives you huge knowledge around futsal, because that's the game that you're going to be doing when you're in school. And the schools have huge competitions. So obviously the teachers, want to prepare the players as best as possible. So put those things together. You've got teachers with degrees and a real knowledge of futsal, and they've got kids for about 5 or 6 years who are there ready to receive not only the knowledge from the coach, but also accumulate massive hours of informal play, playing futsal. And we wonder why some of their players are, the best in the world. What they do during that degree is concentrate upon 1s, 2s, and 3s as part of the 5 players that play futsal. So all of the things that we're talking about being great as an individual, but great with a partner, or brilliant with 2 partners, they're the building blocks of futsal. So the kids in Brazil are getting it through the teachers, through the school competitions, but also the informal activities that they play with kids of different ages and different abilities. That is a massive boost to their formative years regarding being able to play football. So they've got it almost not by chance, but their focus upon smaller units within futsal gives them the springboard to then apply that to their football qualifications if they decide to go on to be a football coach. And I think that's an area that is missing for us, because we don't do small number practices often enough, and we don't coach well enough within them. And that's a very general statement. I'm not being critical of any coach, because I know I prefer to set those situations up and coach only a little bit. But having gone through this, I think there's times when I can perhaps help the players a lot more with some very, very clear and concise bits of information. The Brazilians are getting that. So I think futsal is a major part of, helping us raise the standards in this country. That was a very long answer, by the way, so apologies for that.
No, that's fine. That's fine, because I suppose it leads us on to when you've started to introduce. So Ben's made a comment in the textbooks there around 2v2 model, Pete, and I know we've discussed in the past, certainly when you proposed or you certainly presented some stuff around these smaller formats. I don't know, is that in your thinking in terms of where potentially this could be leading on to?
Yeah, I mean, this is where I will be misquoted or whatever, and I'll get into trouble and I'll get my wrist slapped. We are looking at whether 5v5 is the best starting point for under 7 players, and whether, bearing in mind what I've just said about the learning that can come in 1s, 2s and 3s, whether we need a step or 2 steps before 5v5, particularly for our, we know players are being recruited earlier and earlier, and the Premier League statement about, clubs being able to register players younger and younger and provide a games programme for them. My worry is that if that's not the right games programme of the right format, then we're just bringing kids in earlier and earlier. So I've actually proposed, so this is not secret, but it certainly hasn't been agreed and ratified yet. I've proposed that we start off at under 6s with 2v2, and it really is come and play, no coaching. It's almost a festival and a celebration of, we've got 6-year-olds who want to come and play football. So we start them off 2v2. At 7s and 8s, we play 3v3, and then at under 9s, we start 5v5. Now, that might be radical, controversial, balmy, I don't know. But I've asked for it to be considered by the people who, obviously would have an opinion on these things, but it certainly hasn't been decided, and it's definitely not going to happen in the short term. But that's the way we're looking, so that the point I made earlier about the formats must fit where the children are on their journey. And so we're just trying to make sure that whatever we decide, that it fits in a slightly better way than it might be doing at the moment. And we must, I have to accept that if we discuss it and we decide that actually 5v5 is the best place to start, then I have to hold my hands up and say, okay, that's what we do. But we are considering whether it is the exact fit that we want it to be. That wasn't too controversial, was it?
No, definitely not. I suppose when we consider the things that you've been talking about there, actually it makes perfect sense. I think there's outside challenges which obviously it'll need to be addressed. But I know when we spoke, it was around the environment in which they're competed in, rather than it being this coach on the sideline with 2 players in front of them with a PlayStation controller. It was really that. I suppose that's the added stuff around your thoughts, isn't it? The way in which they're pitched is really, really important, rather than just the 5v5 as it is currently.
Yeah, I think if coaches listen to this and just hear, Pete's saying 2v2 at under 6s, 3v3 at 7s and 8s, oh my God, what's going to happen? That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying as part of this process, we're looking at all of the areas that we might have right at the moment, but if we haven't, what can we include or change or tweak? It's a better fit. That's where we are.
Yeah, spot on.
If the chat box got crazy now, James, I apologise.
I think people are still mulling over what you've just said. No,
oh my God,
I think it's like
that worries me.
Like anything. It's like anything though. If you think of Nick's work for the youth review and the time and effort that took to at the time radical changes again, this is probably on a similar line, isn't it? Yeah. Bruce, I don't know if you want to unmute yourself, mate, around just the futsal and how you see it fit within sort of what Pete's been talking about there. If you can't, don't panic. Bruce, as you just said, the futsal is integral to improving the football standards across the country. Has to be a part of a young player's overall experience of the game.
Absolutely agree, yeah.
Yeah, James. The streets. So I suppose if you took back to when you were kids, if there was only 2 of you, you'd play 1v1, and more people will come and join in potentially. And pretty much that's what the kids will recreate. Yeah, it was low numbers. Yeah, Alan makes a point. Sometimes 20v20 at the time. Neil, Anthropus, are you there? Do you want to unmute yourself and share with?
Yeah, basically, with the under-7s and that I've got at Grassroots is we've, along the lines of what you've said, Pete, is we've tried to look at, can we play a 2v2 or a 3v3 across a 5v5 pitch? So so basically out of, say, 20 minutes, they've played like 10-minute games in those smaller formats, and then literally at the end we've come back together, obviously played like a 5v5 game. So one, obviously the goalkeeper, or if there is a goalkeeper in the team at that age, because you know, might not necessarily have one, to get them more involved as playing as an outfield player and developing their skills, but then obviously just coming together at the end and having that sort of larger game. So, you know, I totally agree with the trying to change the format and, you know, looking at how sort of like Belgium have tried to design their 2v2 program and things like that. So I think obviously smaller numbers, you know, more touches of the ball, and obviously, like you've said, getting them on it more.
Yeah, and I think if coaches en masse said, look, in training, we're doing all of these small number formats, the kids are getting major exposure to them, they're really developing from it, then actually playing 5v5 at the weekend is another test, it's another challenge, and you look to see whether they can apply all of the learning from those smaller formats within a slightly larger one. I would be happy with that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the way that it's worked is that it's the kids have got a little bit more confidence in the smaller games, and then you've obviously just been able to see whether they've applied that into a larger game as well. So it's just brought everything together quite nicely.
Yeah, I think we spoke right at the beginning with a coach who talked about developing their syllabus or their curriculum, and we are looking for transfer, because if you are looking for a permanent change in behaviour, two things: it takes a long time, and a permanent change in behaviour means you can apply it in lots of different contexts, because you've been able to change the way that you react in lots of different contexts. So instead of teaching the kids a million different things, teach them a smaller number of very important things, and then test those things out in lots of different formats and lots of different situations. That's where they develop a robust understanding of how the game fits together. And it's so important, and it cannot be rushed.
Jackie, are you there?
I am.
Do you want to just make
Jackie?
Hello. Yeah, for me, sometimes our league formats can be quite strategic and quite strict. They have like games and that. Whereas sometimes I do think, and with these smaller games, if they come along, have a go and have some fun, and they'll probably actually have more time on the ball than they would do in like a large kind of 7v7 and this, that, and the other. So I guess where you're coming from.
Yeah, Jackie, it might mean that we have to not just change the format, we have to change the environment again, because it may be that instead of having weekly matches, what we do is once a month, we have a day-long festival where children come in the morning, they know it's going to be 2v2s all day. It's more of a celebration, it's a fun day. They can stay with the same partner. There might be times during the day where they can change a partner. There will be games when it's 2v2 without goalkeepers. There might be games where it's 2v2 with goalkeepers, if some children want to have an opportunity to play in goal. So we have to look again, not in isolation, but can we provide the right environment with the right format for children who come for very specific reasons? And one of the ways that we have to find that out is to ask the kids. And I think we all know as coaches that one of the, the most common things that children say is, when are we having a game? And I think we have to listen to that in how we navigate the child through this journey that they're going on, that starts in the foundation phase. And if we've got kids stood on the touchline, they are not playing the game that we want them to fall in love with, and that they come to play. So there, 2v2s is great, because you've got to play all of the time.
I suppose, Pete, it's looking probably at the old mini soccer centres, what previously were the turn up and play type. There's a bib on the pitch, and there you go. So it's maybe looking at going back to that type of approach.
Well, we've looked extensively at what's happening in Belgium, and it's not that we want to copy. We just want to look at what's out there, but make it fit for what we want and the direction that we want to travel in. And there are some aspects of the Belgian model that could really benefit our young players. We've also looked extensively in Scandinavia, where, because of the climate, indoor festivals of 2v2 and 3v3 are the norm, and they have been for a decade. And what you might get is 500 kids turn up at a central venue. The pitches are all marked out. It's a fun day. There's food, there's drinks, and the kids just play all day. So it might be that we have to look at this, instead of, well, we can't have leagues at 2v2 and we can't have leagues at under 6. It's going to take a really different look at this whole thing in order for us to say, do you know what? I think what we offer is a much better fit for why the children come and how we want to help them develop.
Yeah, definitely. And apologies if I've led you down a garden path there, Pete, with the formats, and possibly threw you under a little bit of a bus there.
No, because we are considering it, James, and I am really pushing for us to consider it closely. It is difficult because of the situation that the country's in at the moment, and there's lots of things that are impacting negatively upon the discussions around it. But at least it's on the table, and we've got some really good people looking at it. So I'm hoping that whatever happens, it'll be for the benefit of the young players.
The other side of that, Pete, as well, is, and I don't know what people's thoughts are, but this is probably an opportunity where actually we should be starting to look at things like this, given the current climate. So if it's social distancing or whatever we sort of class it as, but things are going to change or need to change. So this may be an opportunity, a positive to come out of it, certainly.
Yeah.
Alan's made a good point, Pete, around that we could try and create something like this within a club setting, and I'm sure clubs are doing it already, as Neil's already said there. I think we've covered all the comments, Pete, in that little bit there. Do you want me to move on just there, because I know we've talked there? You've probably answered maybe some of these. Is that coming through on your side now?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to throw too much at the coaches, but it's just really asking them to consider whether we have got the balance right between, giving instruction to the players without overpowering them or without confusing them or hijacking the game that they come to play. So have we got the balance right between knowing when to really intervene effectively and really help the players, but also I think it's a skill to know when not to intervene and when not to say anything and just to observe and let the game flow. And also this thing about, knowing when to let the players free to explore, but also know when actually, if I let them consider this thing, it might open up a whole new lot of learning for them. So I think if coaches said to me, what skills would you like us to develop to make us better coaches? I think if you could become highly skilled at those two things, knowing when to intervene, knowing when to keep quiet, knowing when to let the game flow, knowing when to actually drop some pearls of wisdom out there for either an individual or a group, I think you're on the way to becoming a much more effective coach.
Good stuff. I'm going to come back to that. I've just dropped in the chat box, Pete, if anybody's got any final sort of questions, if they want to drop in now. People might be sat there, minds blown, around some of the things that Pete's discussed this evening. But I think, like we've said on the previous episodes, having that critical eye and that ability to have a look at and challenge thinking a little bit, because I'm sure Pete sat there thinking, actually, I probably don't want everybody to just agree with what's going on. I'm sure he'll want some people to, whilst everybody I'm sure does agree, there may be something thinking, have you thought about this, or is this being considered? So now's your chance, guys.
And our group is really open to that kind of feedback, because, you know, I live in my ivory tower with my rose tinted glasses on, thinking, I know what we'll do. This is best for the kids. But I have to accept and acknowledge that the reality for some coaches is a million miles away from what I'm asking them to consider. So, you know, but I think if we've got what's best for the children at the forefront of our minds, then I think we'll hopefully arrive at what's going to be the best fit. Yeah,
good. Someone's asked, I'm not sure who you are because it's come up Cumberland Coffee Club as your name. I don't know if you want to unmute yourself and just ask Pete around. One slightly different, Pete, around goalkeeping. Are you there, or would you like me to ask? I'll fire away and ask. Why are basic goalkeeping skills not rolled into training? Most kids have a quick go, get a smack in the face, and never want to go near it again. It's a poison chalice to most kids.
There are so many examples where goalkeepers have developed late, so they've either played in a different position and then suddenly realised that they might not be fast enough, might not have the engine, whatever, and suddenly they've grown, you know, a foot over the summer, and now suddenly they can be considered to be a goalkeeper. So locking very young children in early, I think, is a mistake. But within that, I also know that some children from a very early age either never want to be a goalkeeper or it's the only thing that they want to do. But I look at it slightly differently. All goalkeepers need to be great with their feet. So in the foundation phase particularly, there should be times when they have an opportunity to play in goal, but also an opportunity for them to play out. If you're lucky enough to have a boy or a girl who only wants to play in goal, you have to make sure that they get a really broad range of experiences and not just goalkeeping bit. Because the modern goalkeeper is almost like a sweeper keeper. So they need all of the skills and abilities and tactical understanding that an outfield player has. But if you look at children, if you're in the foundation phase, I want all of my children to be able to throw and catch. So in our warm-ups and in some of our fun games, I want to see all the children throwing, catching, diving, rolling around, and really being physically active, not just because it might serve them well as goalkeepers later on, but it's great for the period and the time of their development they're in. So I think if you can get the balance right between that, I think you're on the way to, you know, finding out who might want to stay on and become a goalkeeper, but also you're acknowledging that what you're giving them is great for all kids, and from that all kids, some of them might emerge to be the goalkeepers.
Yeah, and I think just to comment on that, so whoever had asked that, if you check out Dean Henderson and Tim Dittmer's webinar, well, not webinar, a bit of an interview really that they've done, pretty much explains exactly that, and Dean's path. Dean goes through his journey up at Carlisle and then on to Man United, and it's exactly the same outfield player as well as goalkeeper, and had to make a decision at, I think he said 12 or 13, and he's not doing too bad for himself now, Dean, so I'm sure there's some merit in that. Hoddy, do you want to mute yourself? Sorry, Peter, you're going to...
No, I think in the foundation phase, locking children into any kind of position is a mistake, because it's too early and they're too young. And until they've been through puberty, we don't really have an idea what their physical capability is going to be, their height, their strength, their speed. And they may develop in a way that would either advantage them or disadvantage them from playing in certain positions. So we need to keep the door open as wide as possible.
Good stuff. Hoddy, are you there, mate? I'll ask just for time. Out of curiosity, Pete, what would your first session back with the foundation phase group look like once we finally get back to it?
Right, I've thought a lot about this, not because I thought there'd be a question on it. Oh, is he with us?
So it seems that the technology isn't great this evening, unless my kids are both on iPads in this house. Yeah, go on, Pete. Do you want to?
Yeah, you didn't prompt me, but I have given this some thought, because I know we're going to be asked at work about how we might restart the season, and my first session back would be a World Cup tournament for children who have been denied football for however many weeks it might be. And I just want them to come and celebrate the fact that we can all be outside, be together with a football, having fun. There would be no coaching from me, and it would be an absolute celebration of being able to play football again. And do you know what? If we started that in September, that might still be carrying on to December. I joke, but I would be tempted.
Good stuff. I suppose and a real practical thing there for somebody, guys that are on the call, if you think, actually, what am I going to do? Sally made some great points in her, as Pete works quite closely with Sally, so you'll know she made some great points in week 3 around connecting prior to even getting back to the session. And that's on our website if you want to have a check out that out. But certainly there, your next protocol when they arrive, great little bit there around World Cup.
Well, James, the connection could be beforehand, is that the players are told what's going to happen. They come in the different shirts of different countries or their favourite player or whatever, and they've already sorted the teams out. So that when everyone arrives, all I've done is mark the pitches out. And so the kids are then in charge of running the tournament, because we want to send out a really strong message that they are important and this whole thing is for them. And so I want them to feel important and that the sessions are for them.
Good stuff. There you are, guys. So there's a great little way of connecting as well before. Nobody's Hoddy. I can see that it keeps kicking you out. I'm not sure what song. Craig Rowley's asked, does smaller games 2v2 not put more pressure on less developed players, lack of success or constant failure?
Absolutely. And one of the issues I raised with the Belgian Federation was exactly that. Because if you're playing in a 2v2, there is no hiding place. And if you're the best player, you're going to stand out. If you're the worst player, you're going to stand out, but for different reasons. And I wouldn't want to put any young player in a format or in any kind of situation where any faults that they had were highlighted to that extent. So there's a certain responsibility for us as coaches if we adopt this kind of approach. And the responsibility is make sure that we pair players up and provide them with opponents that will minimise that situation. And I think that's an invaluable part of the planning process, and also the reflection process afterwards, as to how closely did I match up the different abilities that we're going to have within our group, and did I disadvantage anybody terribly? Did I deal with anybody's disadvantage in the right way? And if so, how can I reduce that disadvantage for the next time that we play? Knowing that in some situations, all you can do is your best, but it will still highlight the fact that some kids are better than others, but we can try to minimize that as much as possible. But for the coach who asked the question, it's a great question. And it was one that I really pored over for a long time, because I really didn't want to highlight the fact that any kid just couldn't cope with what was happening.
Yeah, good. Daniel, Jeffrey, are you there? Or do you want me to ask quickly? We've got just a couple more minutes. I don't want to keep Pete all night, because I'm sure questions will just keep firing in. But he just asks, Pete, what's your thoughts on when to coach off the ball understanding alongside on the ball training when in foundation phase to help understand on the ball further or later on in development?
I think that the biggest indicator are your players, because rather than me making the decision, this is where observing your players is really crucial, because we've just talked about different abilities. And if we're talking about a skills journey, players will be ready for different bits of information at different points on that journey. And so if I see a player who's beginning to take up some really effective supporting positions in relation to the ball and the player on the ball, I will make a mental note of that, and I will work with that player, but I will also begin to mention to the player on the ball, have you noticed the position he's taking up and the options that that might provide if you decide to take it? So I think this is where it all begins to fit together. And all of the things we've spoken about tonight, about individual techniques, individual tactics, about skills journey, about having certain key strands that we keep revisiting, but deepening the knowledge and understanding with each revisit, about different formats. Some formats, I think 2v2 is brilliant for players deciding to release the ball or not to release it. And that gives you a perfect opportunity to coach the decision of when to release it. And it also gives you a chance to coach where is a great place to stand if you're the supporting player. Because in a 2v2, the player on the ball has only really got two decisions. Am I going to stay on it, or am I going to pass it? So for the coach who's asked the question, having the right format gives you the opportunity to begin to coach the right things if you've seen those green shoots in what the players are doing during matches and in training, so that you match the format with the next part of the journey that they need.
Thanks, Pete. I hope that helps, Daniel. And Bruce's final, I think the final one, just looking down, was Bruce's comment was, thanks for your time, Pete. Last thoughts from me is that I'd love to see a future roadshow using futsal as the vehicle for delivery.
Yeah, I think that would be a great opportunity for us to unpick, you know, this idea about playing in 1s, 2s and 3s and how it really fits with a five-a-side game.
Good stuff. Guys, I think that just looking at there, and I'm conscious of time as well, so I did say to Pete it'd be about an hour and a half, and we're 3 minutes over, so apologies, Pete. Just, we've been asking some guests just some quick questions, and I think you've already answered a lot of them. In the last few months, what's the best thing you've read, seen or listened to?
I watched a film called Little Miss Sunshine, and it really is a kid's it's not the Mr. Men or the Miss Men. It's called Little Miss Sunshine, and it's about a young girl in America I think she's about 9 years of age, and she wants to be a beauty queen. So her whole family go along with it, and then she gets to the beauty pageant where all of these girls are 9-year-old girls are made up to look like blooming 20-year-olds, and she just goes on and bees herself, and it's the most refreshing film I have seen for ages. So
there we are. There we are, guys. Best bit of advice you could give to the grassroots coach?
Be kind, be patient, observe more so that you know exactly when and how to help the players, because it's only through their behaviours that you can have any kind of indication as to what kind of help they might need. So rather than preempt it and say, I think you need this, make sure that you watch closely so that whatever advice you give, it's based on things that you've observed over a much longer period of time.
Best investment you'd recommend for a grassroots coach, Pete?
An understanding wife.
Excellent. There's a few out there, I think. How can people get in touch with you if they have any further questions?
My FA email would be a great way. peter.sturgess@thefa.com. I'm going to be furloughed from tomorrow, so I can't go on social media for 3 weeks. So if they email me, I know it'll be stored, and then I promise to answer them when I get back.
And I can vouch for that. I've not known anybody that can answer as many things as Pete does, whether that's on the Hive, email, or Twitter. So I can definitely vouch for him that way. Yeah, Pete, can I just thank you for your time again on behalf of Cumberland FA, because you've been absolutely excellent this evening and spoken so honestly and openly. Apologies if we get you into trouble in any way, but our CEO's on the call and he'll be expecting a phone call if there's a problem. So thanks very much for that. I just want to finish, guys. So next week's guest, and Pete knows Chris as well. I'm going to try and give you something different again. So Chris is going to come on, bear in mind technology issues. So me and Chris are having a trial run next week and share a view from across the pond. So some things that they do in the States. Again, a bit like what Pete's talking about there, looking at different federations. There'll be some interesting things, I'm sure, that Chris will share with us around what goes on in their grassroots game, how it works, etc. So Chris is going to come on and share that with us. And lastly,
Chris
it was just
is very good, by the way.
Yeah,
that's worth listening to.
He is. Lastly, and this is stolen. I think it's stolen from Jamie Godbold. So Jamie put this together. And it was just something. So I was selling the FA Learning YouTube page for a while. But again, I just thought if people are start listening, or people are wanting some things to consider, I'm going against, by the way. So Ed was on a few weeks ago. Everything Ed says around what should we do, we should be reflecting back rather than keeping looking for new things. But I'm going to keep putting just some little droplets in there for people if you've got a spare hour or so. Again, this will be available to view on our website and watch back. So there's some things in there. I'll send that out with the video that I send out after this from Pete's slides. Again,
James, there's also some on the FA's YouTube channel. There's some great webinars being put together. So if coaches I've got some time to watch those. I've been watching them and they are very, very informative.
They are, and I think that's where I listen to the Dean Henderson and Tim Dittmers. And to be fair, the stuff that Tim's been doing, for those, I think there was a guy asked a question earlier around goalkeeping. Check out the stuff that Tim's doing, because it echoes stuff that Graham was on earlier speaking about. It echoes what Pete said tonight. The work that they're doing is incredible around it and gives some real insight.
Definitely.
So yeah, check that out.
Also, James, it's Graham here. Sorry.
Hi, Graham.
Shamelessly plug the youth development DNA stuff on the boot room. And the reason for that, it's not to detract from tonight. It's because hopefully you'll just see how this just totally links. That it's not a totally new thing when you get to 12. It's an extension of the foundation phase where Pete's been promoting for so long. So if your kids are going to be reaching that age at some point soon, or you're just interested, it's on the FA Boot Room website.
And I'll probably do a shameless plug now. So if you fancy coming along on one of these and maybe sharing that with them in a bit more detail.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, anytime.
Yeah, I'll drop you a line, mate, after this.
just before
you're on my hit list.
Just before you go on, really, can I ask? There's a great question that's come in. Just Pete, I've just messaged you, but you haven't seen it, Pete. I think this is a great last question to sort of ask you.
Oh my God, you got me worried now.
Dan Tyre, who's a big advocate of what you're doing, has asked a completely random question, which I would completely expect from Mr. Tyre. He is a massive advocate of this way of thinking. He's asked, what would you rather have, England winning the World Cup or your son or daughter getting to #1 in the charts? Because we both know that they like music. I think it's a great question, Dan.
Yeah, don't make me choose, because I actually saw England win their last World Cup, and I have got such a desire to see them do it again. But I'm not sure I could do that at the expense of my children. So
we'll just settle it.
Could I not have both?
Yeah, we'll settle. For thanking you, as thanks tonight, we'll give you both, Pete. There you go.
That'll do me. I could die a very happy man.
No,
yes, Dan, thanks for that, mate. Yeah.
and I apologise because I missed Dan asked me to read something out earlier on, Pete, and I apologise because I've been so caught up in what we've been talking about. But Ben's pretty much echoed what he said there around the impact that you've had, and I think that's probably on behalf of us all in here and listening to yourself. I don't think you realise the impact that you might have on some people, and I just wanted to thank you for that as well, because that you've definitely changed the way certainly a lot of us think about the game and view the game. So yeah, on behalf of ourselves, I want to thank you for that.
Thank you, James, and thanks for tonight. I mean, you know, I can't do this without an invite. So James and Ben, thank you very, very much. And thanks for Graham for being my wingman, knowing that if I ever got in trouble, he'd come and save me. So thanks. And thanks to all the coaches.
Pete.
Yeah, guys, and like I said, I said stay at home on this slide for ages, and I changed it to stay alert. I'm going to change it again next week. But if we can help at all in any way, shape, or form, like I say, please get in touch with us, and we will do our best. Football, you'll have seen our recent stuff around planning for football. So we're in a phase now where we're starting to plan. We don't quite know what it's looking like, but there's some things that people are starting to do. So I'm sure in the coming weeks we'll have a little bit more clarity and we'll be moving forward with it. So thanks for this evening, guys. Thanks again to Pete and everybody that's contributed, because I'll be honest, it's a bit boring probably listening to me, certainly me. It's definitely not Pete, but it's certainly me. So thanks very much for your time again, Pete, and thanks to everybody else.
Thanks, James. And I bet as part of that planning process, I bet there's a 2v2 pilot festival up in Cumberland. Not that I'm trying to preempt anything, but yeah. Right, thanks, guys.
Thanks a lot, guys. Thanks for the time. Cheers.
Good night. Good night.
Thanks for that, Pete.
Oh, you're welcome, James. Was that all right for you?
Yeah, great.